big move for you, Bertie, going back to your alma mater. Tell me about how difficult was the decision to go from Western, which is so well established, to Waterloo, where there's a lot of work to be done?
Yeah, a lot of work to be done. The decision process obviously was, definitely had to cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure that everything was in the right direction, going and moving in the right direction at Waterloo. It was hard to leave Western because, obviously being established in traditional powerhouse program, that success and being part of that success, it's always a little bit better when you win, and going to Waterloo and knowing the work that needed to be done there and has to be done still there, it was a little bit of a difficult decision, more so leaving Greg. Greg became a mentor and a very close friend, and he was very positive in this whole transition and encouraging me to kind of go and spread my wings, and I was ready to be a head coach, and that was encouraging from that standpoint. But the big thing is like you said, going to my alma mater, charged with the task of resurrecting a program that had success while I was there, and that's kind of my mission, is to get back to the standard of excellence that I was a part of when I went to Waterloo and playing in 4 straight Yates Cups and winning 2 in the late 90s, and seeing that nothing's really drastically changed in regards to the academic requirements, and it's just about a direction and positive energy, and knowing that the administration and our alumni is behind us, so that's made for an easier transition moving forward.
You're in that lower 1/3 tier in the OUA right now, but you do have some recruiting advantages and some support advantages. Can you explain what some of those are?
Well, obviously with recruiting, the University of Waterloo is an outstanding university and has a great reputation in, over 100 different undergrad programs. I don't think selling the university from an academic standpoint is going to be difficult. It has great merit and great reputation throughout the country. And with recruiting right now, it's about season and opportunity, and for young kids like these guys here at the Team BC tryout and across the country, there's going to be an opportunity that exists over the next couple of years to come in and make a difference and make an impact early and be part of a rebuild. So it's not like, we're going to, you want to set the bar high, but you got to be realistic and know that we're not going to win the Vanier Cup next year. But that being said, some kids, like that opportunity to be a part of the build and be a contributing factor, and hopefully we get to the point where, in 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to have a locker room full of good quality players that it's going to be more difficult for guys to come in and compete right away.
How does your pitch change, though, as a recruiter? And I know I've called you the hardest working man in the recruiting business, even prior to you taking this job here at Waterloo, but there's got to be a nuanced shift in the way that you communicate the Western Mustangs and the Waterloo Warriors. What are the differences there?
Well, I think obviously we got to talk about a rebuild and versus being an established program that's going to compete on the national level year in and year out, and I think kind of taking the way the Carleton Ravens did, starting from really taking an attitude that we're starting from scratch and the only way we can go is up. And for some kids, I think being a part of something new and part of building something is what their individual characteristics dictate. And I think when you find those kids and the kids that want to do that, then you got to make sure you secure their commitment. Not every kid wants to go and kind of wait their turn, and I mean that's the reality of it, and I ultimately want to make sure that we get to that point where kids have to wait their turn. But right now, I think the biggest thing with the pitch is the fact that when we say we're going to give a kid an opportunity to compete, the reality of it is they're probably going to play earlier at our place than they would at established places like Western or McMaster or Guelph or any of those in the OUA, where there's guys ahead of them and they got to wait their turn.
This is the first time we've seen Waterloo out in BC recruiting in quite a long time. How important was that for you to make sure that the resources were there for you to do the recruiting that you normally did back at Western before you took the job?
It was important, and obviously before I put pen to paper, I wanted to make sure that the resources and the financial backing was there. But I think it just becomes prioritizing and what you want to do with your budget. And for me, I think recruiting is the lifeblood of your program, not only recruiting student athletes, but recruiting alumni, recruiting support on campus, so on and so forth. And that's kind of what, has built my reputation on being a recruiter. And so I've prioritized that we want to create a national brand, especially with a university with the academic reputation that we have and the co-op programs. I mean, after speaking to a lot of the kids last night, a lot of the kids were very interested because of the fact that you can make money while you're going to school, and nowadays coming out of school debt-free is a big thing, and that's one of the unique advantages we have at Waterloo. So I want to get out, and hopefully we can land 2 or 3 kids from BC and 2 or 3 kids from Alberta. I mean, recruiting in Ontario is very, very competitive, we know, in 11 teams, and obviously you want to recruit the top student athletes. You don't want to just fill your roster with guys that aren't necessarily going to make a difference. And so for us to, I think, take leaps and bounds and kind of overtake, the lower half of the OUA right out the gate, we got to recruit nationally, and that's why we're out here, and happy to be out here, and the relationships that I've been able to create while I was at Western and St. FX and carry them forward now here at Waterloo.
Did you feel that the recruiting temperature went up just a little bit when York went out to Alberta and pulled 5 top guys down?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what they've been working towards. With Warren being the head coach of the national junior program, I think there's a strategy behind there, and I think he built in. And then he's also, there's a it's not like they just kind of parachute in there either. They have Kamal Peterson, who's an area guy in Alberta, so it was a strategic move on their part, and obviously a great coup for them. 5 outstanding athletes, and we'll see how things go moving forward. But I think there's interest from kids across the board that they want to look east and see what their opportunities are, and I think I think there is also that enticement that that they can play and contribute earlier and be make a difference and be a part of it. And it is, like you said, different from the pitch we'd say when at Western, but we're all building towards that established, sustained success, and that's ultimately where we're going.
I hate the term changing the culture, but I'm sure that's one of the things that you've got to do going into Waterloo. What do you have on the shelf right now, and with what you have on your roster currently, how can you direct them towards that new objective that you want and the new vision that you want?
Well, we kind of, you got to come in like a lion. So January 5th, our first team meeting, the message was that, they knew my background, and everybody better be looking in the rearview mirror, and everyone's replaceable, including myself. So, and it's about being positive, and that's kind of my attitude. Is glass is half full. The 2 things you can control each and every day you wake up is your attitude and your effort. And I want the guys to I think it's a top-down effect, and if I'm going to be positive and I'm going to work my tail off, then those guys are going to be expected to do the same. And so part of the culture shift is, how do you create a winning culture is a question that you ask yourself. The immediate answer is wins and losses, right? Winning. Well, no, not necessarily. It's about your attitude and just changing what we do. And we changed the climate of how we work. We were working out, training every morning at 7 a.m. Monday to Friday, doing compete lifts on Saturdays. Kind of going with the adage of the Michigan Wolverines, those who stay will be champions, and the first week, a couple guys tried me and they got garbage bags, and that's the way it is. And we're going to move forward with the guys that want to be here and work their tails off and understand that a coach cares. It's reciprocal, and I want them to understand that, if they're going to work their tails off, and I'm going to work my tail off, and we'll see the benefits of it moving forward. But understanding that, it's not going to, there's no magic, as Tuffy Knight would say, there's no magic pixie dust to sprinkle on it. It's going to be a work in progress, and I understand that. And, just excited, and I think that shift has happened, just for how we did our off-season workouts, and we ran a mini camp during reading week indoors, and, fed the guys, did a team function, ran spring camp, did inter-squad practices with Laurier and we're Western. I mean, just that shifted the culture there, that we're really working towards getting better. And I mean, the cupboards aren't as bare at Waterloo as people might perceive on the outside. That's another thing, watching the film and seeing there's, we got 20 guys on the team that can compete in at any school, I'm confident in. But, they're product of their environment and kind of being whipped dogs, and then the attitude kind of, after 20 minutes, when the rest of the team and some of the coaches aren't, being positive, all of a sudden it's hard for them to stay positive. And so I see guys making plays, and some positions we're solid at, and some positions not so much. So
I got to ask you the question, there's been discussion of uniforms, of roster sizes, of parity issues, of scheduling issues in this offseason. Probably the most lively discussion I've seen in quite some time. If there are some changes out there that you could make in this off season, heading into this season, what would they be?
I mean, obviously parity is an important thing, I think, across the board, and I don't think it's just exclusive to CIS football. If you look at CIS basketball and take the men's and women's, and Carleton and Windsor have been winning just as more as consistently or more than that of Laval, and then parity within our own conference. Sure, you know, there's the adage of the haves and the have-nots, and then I think you know, a lot of programs just need to find the right people and put the right energy into the programs. But like I said to some of the other coaches in our first OUA coaches meetings, you know, roster sizes, I think that should be, you know, my personal opinion is to each their own, really. I think that should be based on what the academic institutions decide. You know, you're not going to win football games with a player 90 to 110. You're going to win football games with the front end players, and that's about recruiting more than anything. Uniforms and helmets and stuff. I mean, all the kids like swag right now. So I mean, some schools don't want to spend that money, or can't afford, for that matter, to spend the money to buy extra helmets and all that kind of stuff. But that's once again a thing that I'm teach their own, really. I mean, it's your perception of reality, and you know, for me, it's I like tradition, and we don't need 6 helmets or 5 helmets or 4 helmets or 3 helmets or 2 helmets. You know, it's decide what you want to do, and I don't think other schools or institutions should be persecuting others because, you know, they don't want to do that. I don't think it should be standardized. But that being said, I do think from a parity perspective that, you know, I think you know, recruiting regulations are something that I think that's coming forward in the CIS Football Summit that I absolutely believe, as a young head coach with a young family, we need to absolutely address. You know, in my world, I was speaking to Blake Nill about it last night. You know, I don't see why we couldn't have a 1-week blackout for every month of the 12 months of the year. You know, if you can't get your recruiting work done in three weeks of a month, then I guess you're not being efficient enough with what you're doing. You know, I think we need to you know, also have lives outside of coaching, and I think how we get that back is by you know, addressing some of the recruiting issues, and I think by addressing some of the recruiting issues, then in turn you're going to see some of the parity issues you know, come to the table, and hopefully get more level playing field in that regard.
I got to ask you a question about that, though, before we go here. How do you enforce it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, Jim. I mean, I think that's what everyone says, you know. If we had a governing body, a compliance agency like the NCAA does, but that's going to mean that, you know, someone's going to have to get paid a salary, or multiple people are going to have to get paid a salary to enforce it. And I mean, if that's the road we need to go down, then we should figure it out. And whether, you know, each university contributes, you know, a chunk of change to help that happen. I think that's because I don't think we can continue to gripe about oh, school X and school W are doing this and that, and you know, it's kind of just he said, she said, and pointing fingers, and there's no kind of repercussions or even investigations, and maybe it's hearsay, right? You know, 2 sides to every story, then there's the truth, right? And so you know, I think that's an absolute necessity, having some type of a compliancy agency within the CIS, within the conferences, but I think that's definitely would be a step in the right direction in regards to, you know, changing recruiting regulations, all sorts of different regulations. But like you said, you know, until there's a governing body that's going to enforce it and not slap people's wrists, then, you know, people are going to continue to do what they do.
Well, I know you're going to tear it up at Waterloo. Thanks a lot for this.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.